Welcome, everyone. We have been on quite a journey together through our first series on the everlasting gospel, and today we've arrived at part 8, the very last part. We've come to the end of our study, and I just want to say thank you for being with us through all of it. So today, we're going to face what is, for many, one of the most difficult questions in all of faith. It's a question that can really trouble the heart and the mind. If God is truly a God of infinite love, of boundless mercy, how can he possibly allow anyone to be finally and permanently lost? It feels like a contradiction, doesn't it? But thankfully, God hasn't left us in the dark on this. He's given us an answer. So let's gently and very carefully explore this profound topic together. To even begin to understand the end, we actually have to go all the way back to the beginning, back to the very nature, the very character of God himself. Before we can talk about death, we have to establish, without a doubt, that our God is fundamentally a God of life. And this isn't just a preference of his, it is his deepest, most foundational desire for every single person he has ever created. And look, this isn't just a prophet's opinion or some theologian's theory. What we have right here is God speaking for himself, and he's making an oath on his very existence. As I live, he says. That's the strongest possible way he could state something. And his sworn testimony is this: he takes absolutely no pleasure, none at all, in the death of the wicked. His joy, his entire desire, is found in one thing: seeing people turn from a path of destruction and choose to live. This is the heart of God, laid completely bare for all of us to see. And we see exactly how he acted on that desire in this next verse. It's probably the most famous verse in the entire Bible, and for very good reason. It's the whole story of salvation right there in one sentence. And notice, God's love wasn't some passive feeling. It was an active, sacrificial love. He gave. And the whole purpose of that incredible gift was explicitly stated: to prevent us from perishing and to give us everlasting life. The entire plan of salvation is built on this one foundation. God's desire is for life, not for death. And just to be absolutely 100% clear, the very next verse doubles down on this truth. Christ's mission wasn't one of condemnation. It was a rescue mission. He didn't come to find fault and pass sentence. He came to provide a way out, a path to be saved. So the point we absolutely have to grasp is this: the default setting of God's heart, his primary motivation in everything he does with us, is salvation. It is his ultimate will that every single person be saved. Okay, so if we know that salvation is his deepest desire, the next logical question is, what has he done about it? Did he just wish for it from a distance, or did he actively pursue it? The answer is that heaven has literally exhausted every possible resource in its effort to save humanity. This is a question worth pausing on for a moment. I really want you to consider it. When you think about everything God has done, creating us in his own image, giving us a perfect world, pleading with us through his Spirit when we fall, sending prophets with messages of warning and love, and then ultimately giving his own Son to die in our place, what more could he possibly have done to show his love and to win us back? And here we see God himself asking that very same question through the prophet Isaiah. It's just a heartbreaking plea. He looks at his people, his vineyard, and he lists everything he's done for them: the planting, the protection, the tender care. And then he asks, what was left undone? What more was there for me to do? And the implied answer is just crushing. Nothing. He had already done everything he possibly could. Ellen White captures this profound reality so beautifully. In the gift of Christ, God didn't hold anything back. He didn't offer a partial gift or some limited resource. He gave all the resources of heaven. Just think about that for a second. The entire wealth, the power, the infinite love of the universe was poured out in that one gift. Nothing was lacking. The plan for our salvation is perfect and complete, with absolutely no stone left unturned by divine love. So if God's desire is for all to be saved, and if he has done everything possible to make that happen, then we have to turn to the final critical factor in this whole equation: our own choice. And this is where the awesome and, honestly, sometimes terrifying weight of free will comes into play. Ultimately, our eternal destiny is something we decide for ourselves. The Bible presents this as a simple, unchangeable law of the universe, almost like the law of gravity. It's the law of sowing and reaping, and the principle is so clear and direct. If you sow to the Spirit, if your choices, your thoughts, your life is aligned with God, you will reap life everlasting. But if you sow to the flesh, if you consistently choose a path of selfishness and sin, the inevitable harvest is corruption, which just means decay and death. You see, it's a direct consequence of our actions, not some arbitrary punishment from a distant God. This verse just perfectly summarizes the dynamic that's at play. God looks at his people with such sorrow and says, "You have destroyed yourselves." The responsibility for their ruin lies squarely with them, with their choices. But in the very same breath, he cries out, "But in me is thine help." The path to destruction is of our own making, but the path back to life is found only in him. He offers the help freely, but he will not force us to take it. The choice, it remains ours. And here, Ellen White states the conclusion with startling clarity. God doesn't destroy anyone. Those who perish perish because they have, through a lifetime of choices, systematically destroyed their own capacity to receive and enjoy life. It is, in the truest sense of the word, a spiritual suicide. The crucial point here is that final destruction is not an act of divine revenge, but the final tragic outcome of a self-chosen path. Well, this leads us to a deeper, more personal question. Why? Why would someone ultimately choose this path? Why wouldn't they want to be in heaven? The answer lies in a fundamental incompatibility. Through a life of sin, a person can become so out of tune with God, so different from his character of love, that his very presence would become unbearable to them. This quote from Ellen White offers such a profound shift in perspective. We often think of heaven as a universal reward and hell as a punishment, but she reframes it entirely. For a person who has spent a lifetime cultivating selfishness, pride, and hatred, the pure, selfless, loving atmosphere of heaven wouldn't feel like a reward at all. It would feel alienating and even agonizing. They would be deeply, profoundly uncomfortable and would shrink away from it. Think about it. In a place where every heart just joyfully responds to the heart of infinite love, their heart would feel nothing but condemnation and unease. Their thoughts, their interests, their motives, everything about them would be completely foreign to the culture of heaven. They would be, as it says here, a jarring, discordant note in the perfect harmony of the universe. So their exclusion isn't because of a keep out sign on the gate. They're shut out by their own unfitness for its companionship. They just wouldn't belong, and they would be the first to know it. And this leads to the ultimate tragic consequence. The very thing that is life and joy and warmth to the righteous, that pure, holy glory of God's presence, would be an agonizing, consuming fire to the wicked. It's the same presence, the same light, the same love, but to a character that's been twisted and hardened by sin, that pure love feels like a torment, that holy light feels like a burning fire. Their every instinct would be to flee, to escape it at any cost. So what happens when this moment finally arrives? When Christ returns in all his glory, and every person, saved and lost, must finally stand in his presence. What is the reaction of those who have spent a lifetime running from him? Their final plea is not for mercy, it's a cry for the end. The book of Revelation paints this vivid, sobering picture. When the wicked finally see the face of the one who sits on the throne, the face of the Lamb who died for them, their response isn't awe or even last-minute repentance. It is sheer terror. They're so consumed by their own guilt and so out of harmony with his character that they cry out for the mountains and the rocks to just crush them, anything to hide them from that loving gaze they've rejected their whole lives. And this isn't some isolated idea. Jesus himself quoted this very concept when he spoke of the end times. It reveals a settled final state of the heart. The very last thing they want is to live forever in the presence of the God they have rejected. To them, annihilation has become preferable to an eternal life of torment in his presence. They desire death rather than life with God. So now let's bring all of these threads together. Understanding all of this, God's desire for life, his exhaustive efforts, our freedom of choice, and the final plea of the lost. This allows us to see the final destruction in a completely new light. It's not an act of vengeance, but a final, sorrowful act of mercy. This quote from Ellen White is the perfect summary of everything we've talked about. Let's just break it down. Their destiny is fixed by their own choice. Their exclusion from heaven is voluntary with themselves. And therefore, when God finally honors that choice, his action is both just because it's the natural consequence they chose, and merciful because it ends a state of being that would have been nothing but eternal torture for them. In the end, God will have proven to the entire universe that he did everything he possibly could to save every single person. The lost themselves will confess that their own choices led them to this point. And faced with an eternity of self-inflicted misery and anguish in the presence of a holiness they can't bear, they long for it to end. And so in his final heartbreaking act of love, God grants their request. He brings their suffering to an end. This is the mercy of death.
And with that, we conclude our series. Thank you so much for being with us on this journey through the everlasting gospel. We truly hope it has been a blessing and has brought clarity to these important truths. Please continue to check out all of Project 1888's videos as, together, we seek to end the delay and finally go home.